Wait a minute. It's not 2006.
We could create a playground that could allow kids from around the world to connect. That could really be something.
Those penguins are in for a big shock.
And we're just celebrating all their hard work and all their heart that they put into it.
When we first launched it, like, this thing is gonna be a huge game.
Why don't we just call it Club Penguin?
Hello everyone, I'm Surreal Hand. Today I'm joined by an absolute force in the Club Penguin community. He's a historical wizard, thorough documenter, and his appreciation for the game has no measure. You can find him at Carphon on Twitter and also as King in Club Penguin Rewritten. Carphon, thanks for being open for this conversation. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm actually really impressed on how you've approached this project, and I love, collaborating with you, and I just think it's a great time to be able to talk to someone about, the community. It's about time I was able to share my thoughts with someone,
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you about all things, but thank you for that. So before I kick this thing off, I just want to give you your flowers. If you don't know, Carphon has been a player, blogger, and someone who has chronicled a lot of Club Penguin's historical gems over the years. His Twitter is a nostalgic pool of moments and memories. His engagement and passion is selfless for the community, and with each edition, you truly immerse everyone back into those early days. So thank you for all that you have brought and continue to bring to this game.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Like, seriously.
For sure. So with that being said, I kind of just want to start at the beginning, kind of look back. So that 2005 through 2007 era of Club Penguin obviously means a great deal to a lot of people. And I have a lot of fond memories from this time. I registered in May of 2006, which I think was the underground party at the time.
Yeah.
It just came out.
Yeah. Yep.
And to me, it's sort of like the golden age of the game's legacy. So for you personally, what was it about this time that made it so special?
So you actually joined at a really cool point in Club Penguin's history. So that's actually pretty cool for you. But when we think about the idea of why it was so special, I like to look at it from a historical perspective and think about the concept that, Lance Preet was holding on for years. And you look back at July of 2000 when he had the idea of this game called Snow Blasters, which was essentially kind of the same idea of Club Penguin. It was like a little multiplayer world, but he kind of held on to the idea for years. It went to Experimental Penguins, Penguin Chat, and everyone just kept loving it. And I think by the time Club Penguin came around, it came at the perfect time because though virtual worlds were around, not many were marketable to kids. And the only one you can really think about at the time was Toontown. And we kind of know how that battle went when Toontown was during the later 2000s wasn't really able to compete because Club Penguin was just soaring. And when I look at that, they were on a mission. The community and the team were so close. At one point, the official website even advertised fan blogs that they were like, hey, check out this fan's blog.
Oh my God.
This is awesome. Yeah. And so at the time that you joined, they were consistently hearing feedback. I think the original team did a great job of ensuring that children got a very safe world that they can socialize and make friends with, all the while having the comfort of having their voice heard,
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually so shook. It started so early. I had no idea that it started its development, way back with our Snail's development and all that. That's crazy.
Yeah. And that's what's also wild because at the time they weren't really backed by a big company. And, Disney didn't acquire it until August 2007. So Club Penguin was only powered by New Horizons Interactive, which wasn't nearly as big. So when you take all that into consideration, they had to produce the best product for it to survive up until 2007, until, Disney got it. Yeah, so I think it was just really good game development. And the concept was just too perfect to pass, especially us as kids, playing it back then.
Oh my God, we got sucked into a world, it was so big, it was so undiscovered. And I think that's what was the allure of it, new grounds. It was just something brand new and fresh.
And it's penguins, penguins just work.
That's for sure. But you mentioned the community, right? So I remember back then, the Club Penguin community had always sort of like existed out of the borders of the game. I think of the times before homogenized social media like Twitter and things, like there were things like WordPresses and YouTube, forums, Zat, etc. You know, they all existed along the earliest days of the game. So what are some of your experiences with these orbiting sites, and what do you think they added to the game?
Yeah, it's no secret, like websites like WordPress dominated the Club Penguin community. Everyone wanted to be a blogger. And so did YouTube. I mean, and in the early years around 2007, you just see a spike of music videos, you know, CPMVs, party tutorials,
classic,
and even comedy bits. You know, people ventured into comedy. They want to make people laugh, but it was a form of connection. You know, sometimes the Club Penguin filter was kind of restricting sometimes, you know, as needed though. You know, it's a kid's game.
Of course.
But, you know, there are chat rooms like Zat and Bribble that people were able to make, and they were able to connect outside of the game. And personally, I started sprouting out in like mid 2008. I went to Zat. I joined all these crazy chats, and I was like, oh my gosh, like these people are into the same thing I am, you know? Yeah. And I think that really contributed to community strength in the game, because even though they logged off, they can log back on something completely different and still share the same ideas and stories with their friends that they're making, you know, their virtual friends.
Well put. And like you said, like they really had this drive to like honor the community. I remember like artwork and stuff being posted on the website and stuff. Like that was crazy.
Yeah. It really allowed creative freedom and the distribution of creative freedom. Like you said, creating arts, people, you know, write short stories, especially creating programs and distributing those programs. And that was a way to learn. I mean, like for me, I'm now a computer science major because I, as a kid in Club Penguin, was checking out all these programs, and those were like my first exposures to the technical side of just the technical world, you know?
Yeah, and wow, you almost can't believe like something like Club Penguin would influence where you went, but it's like a story you hear so often, you know? Like it meant so much to especially children, but everyone really who came across it.
Yeah, man, and especially YouTube, man. I think YouTube really advertised Club Penguin because as soon as I joined, man, I was on YouTube and I was seeing all these videos, and I was in a whole world of myself. I thought it was the coolest thing because, like, you'll see this video of like someone, and then you'll see them in game, and it's like, dude, I just watched your clip. Like, that's awesome. You know, it was a different form of connection.
In the video,
or they're like clicking profiles or something. I'll click your penguin on video.
Oh my god, that is such a throwback. But you're so right. Like all of these little pockets, you know, they really brought a more full scope to the game. And like, you bring up all these Club Penguin movies, but like, anyone could do it back then. That's why Hypercam 2 is such a meme, because it's like it costs nothing for someone to make potentially an iconic video back then.
Exactly. And they usually had those same default YouTube soundtracks that would play in the background, or maybe notepad, and they'll put the note. I mean, I did that. I'll put the notepad on the screen and they'll type something.
Hey, what's up?
Oh man.
No, that's cool. And like out of this, you know, kind of bred some infamy and some famous people. So essentially, whenever I go through your Twitter, some of my favorite posts are like when you detail about like famous penguins of long ago. You know, their fame originates from everything from like the content creation, forum contributions, blogging, item rarity, to even things like hacking. So who, in your opinion, is deserving of a mention in the long history of Club Penguin, and who are like, I guess, the key players to you in the long timeline?
Yeah, from around the time I've been here, I have seen like many really cool inventions and, you know, things get spread. And I have three specific people. Some may just be unsung heroes. Some are quite popular and, you know, deserve some recognition. But the first one I want to recognize was Rodrigo. His username was Rodrigo13, and when you compare to now, everyone's very innovative. Everyone's very technologically, adapted. They know how to program. But back then, it was kind of rare for the use of like Flash tools. Well, Rodrigo back then, he was like a Flash genius, and he made all these things like mascot trackers, pin trackers, band detectors, and that was all new at the time. But the best invention, in my opinion, was did you ever have like a MySpace back in the day?
Way back, yes.
Okay, so Rodrigo made Space, which was a MySpace for Club Penguin.
Yeah. Oh
and
my God.
And so it was an entire social network that you can have a friends list, profile, mood. You can post statuses, and it was just this massive social network. And Rodrigo, along all of his other inventions, just like posted this, and it lasted for like quite a few years. But like that was the most ideal. And I feel old to talk about this because even not many people even know about MySpace nowadays. So.
That's crazy. We're so old.
I know. So for those who don't know about MySpace, it was like Facebook before Facebook with like crazy customization
Your
features.
top friends. There was always some drama.
Yeah, and also besides Space, he invented this thing called Pixel Penguins. This is around 2007, and it was like an 8-bit player card generator, like Mario, right? The early days of Mario, and it was an 8-bit penguin that you can put all items on. And man, everyone had that as their profile picture. I even did it.
Yes,
but it was the
you
coolest
had
thing.
Access to like all the items, right? Like
yeah, it was this thing you could put on your little pixel penguin. Is a little bitty bunch of pixels, and you would just set it as your profile picture. And so those were all inventions of Rodrigo, and he kind of left the community around 2010, and for the next decade, you'll see a ton of his inventions being utilized, like mascot trackers and whatnot. Those were like one of his key things that he helped develop. So I think that is like one of the first people I would want to recognize.
What an OG. Wow.
Yeah, man, he was pretty cool. The second person is a person that a lot of people know was Chainman1405, or now he's publicly known as Devin. But by the time I left the community, Devin started to get a ton of traction on his website, Penguin Memories.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and by the time I came back, I was well aware that he was the guy to go and check out, the news. But I think the thing that differentiated Devin was he thoroughly documented catalog covers, items, and essentials of parties. So if you go on Club Penguin Memories, you can go by year, like 2006, and then you can see all the catalogs from 2006 and all the parties from 2006. And at the time, that wasn't really heard of, or it wasn't heard of to such scale. And so I actually credit Devin. If I truly back in the day couldn't find something, I would go to Devin's website, and if he didn't have it, I'm like, all right, it's not on the internet, So I definitely,
wow.
yeah. So I really want to appreciate everything Devin has done for the community, and he's pretty recognizable for modern day users, and I think he should get his own props. And like you mentioned, lastly, on the more programming side, the technical side. I think it's important to cover because it was a huge part of our community. Microchip 123.
Oh man.
So this guy was a very good programmer, and he invented numerous things. But essentially, he invented Penguin Storm. And Penguin Storm, I'm sure, as you knew, from 2008, 2009, 2010, just ran the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone had it. I mean, I can't lie. I used it for a little bit. I made a fake penguin. I put it on there. I checked it out. And it was the coolest invention, which, by the way, Penguin Storm was the predecessor to private servers. It actually sprouted into private servers because the whole concept was literally what we needed to make, a different part of Club Penguin. And so he actually made this few things, including the first moneymaker, where people would download this little program, give themselves like 1 million coins, right? And yeah, this guy was so talented, and I think his creations, as well as the creations of the people I just mentioned really changed the game forever, which some can argue for better or worse. But I just think, in my opinion, they're pretty important to the community.
Well, those are certainly all great picks because, like, Rodrigo with the mascot tracker alone, like, those are still used even in Club Penguin rewritten. Like, with
those are huge.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And Train Man, just knowing how much he influenced you, like that.
Yeah, especially.
And then Mike, you know, basically kickstarting the private server thing. But even just like those old Club Penguin cheat forums, like, I don't know if you ever went on Club Penguin HQ. I'm pretty sure Microchip was like a mod or something.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
Classic. Like, just those. I think that's such an interesting part of the community's history, is like those people who kind of broke the game.
Yeah, and it actually shows. You can look at it this way: they enjoyed the game that much, they just wanted to, see some of the more intricacies of the game. I mean, they found enjoyment of still playing, but in a way, just kind of picking apart the game, seeing what it's made out of, all the while teaching themselves. And it's a common story, and many people learned a lot about themselves from, doing this type of stuff.
Yeah. So obviously with the people, you've had to like look back a lot. So you've discovered a lot, I assume, from your ongoing documentation, just from telling the stories of its games and its players and Club Penguin's just rich history overall. So since you've been doing it for so long, like, what do you think this process has taught you about the game and, like you said, yourself? Being immersed in the different points of this game's lifespan, like, what are some of the moments for you that you feel like are the most worthy to highlight too?
Yeah, over the years of doing this, I found that I enjoy giving things respect or recognition when it is needed. So I had officially left the game like around 2010, but when I came back, I was seeing that like not many people were kind of relating to the experience that I went through like back then, and I was like, oh man, that's like kind of disappointing. Like, I wanted to share the story of like how cool this was. So it was a huge part of my childhood, and I like to say I'm giving a nod to my childhood with each post I make, whether like you mentioned, if it's a tribute to a player or just a general throwback, like a picture of a party. Being here for quite a while, I have seen many players come and go, and it's taught me quite a few things about life. I made a ton of friendships, and though some may, leave the game and move on, and perhaps I won't speak to them again, I still have the lessons and memories they gave me.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty important, and I'm sure you can quite relate to that as well,
Oh, absolutely. I just, like you said before, like, I feel like Club Penguin touched so many people, and it obviously influenced games after it too. Like, but it's just cool to hear that through like looking at other people's stories, like you can learn something about yourself. I think that's such like I don't know, that's such a beautiful way to like do what you do,
And I think that's why it was so popular for so many years, because people had that attachment. Like, man, I can look at someone's player card who hasn't been on in 3 years, and I'm just like, oh man, this guy
hasn't been online in 10 years. But we're sort of at a different stage, right? So like me and you both joined in 06, and that almost felt like a different era really to what we are today, but the game lives on despite it officially being closed. Obviously the private server scene is still going strong, so I'm just curious, like, with its controversy and all of that, like, what are your experiences with private servers, and like where do you see maybe Club Penguin and all of these kind of authentic experiences you talk about going from here?
So as a little backstory, kind of referring back to what I mentioned about the Penguin Storm, private servers kind of started in 2008, but they were it's in the name, they were super private, and they didn't really start to get public until around 2009, 2010, and that's when I joined. I joined this very popular private server called ICP, and it was on its third iteration. So I joined ICP V3. It's a strange name, but at the time, private servers were insanely different than how they are now, because they were products of hacking programs, kind of like now. However, they were so new that the developers wanted all the freedom they can get. You can curse, you can get every single item with a single command. I remember there was a command you can make your penguin the size of the room and just annoy everyone. Oh, it was awful.
Everyone in the town is huge.
Yeah, they're all yelling at you, but that was ICPv3. It was like a more of an anarchy server, because everything was so new. But it highlighted the raw virtual experience that for some reason some users wanted, but they never got. With the kid-friendly version of the game. But over the years, the general population of private servers adapted gradually a more professional, organized role. You can see this turn around, 2015 to 2017, when you start to see a bit more creative freedom because the game was starting to close. So it's like, let's stop messing around, because once this game closed, we kind of need at least one or two games to fall back on, right? Yeah. And you can see this when Two Town closed, there's Two Town Rewritten. And that's been running for 10 years because we need a common ground server, which, anyone can pick whatever it is, but that they can still play though the game ended.
To an authentic degree, right?
Yeah, and just keep the authenticity. And so now, in modern day, you can see servers like Club Penguin Rewritten, they stopped command usage and enforced vanilla filters. And like I said, if Club Penguin was going to end soon, it was important to provide that safe environment in any private server that the original game provided. And as you can see, I saw a post recently on Twitter where someone said it was recently more of a Club Penguin renaissance with all the private servers coming out. And it's always a great time to show your sheer talent. And I don't know if you know about this private server called Club Penguin 3D. No. It's like a complete reinvention of Club Penguin in a more 3D aspect. Like, it's completely 3D, and I can provide some pictures, but I think that private server alone is a sheer example of just community creativity and everyone coming together to share that experience. And it completely reinvents the game's assets, But in the end, with private servers, it's always unclear on what to expect next. Because back then, a decade ago, when I was still playing private servers, Disney was hitting them with lawsuits left and right. And over time, they kind of gave up, and private servers are kind of free-floating right now. But you really never know what to expect. And I think the best course of action as a community is to remain in talks with the original creators. People like Lane Merrifield and Lance Reed, they still communicate with the community, and they still share the same ideas that they want Club Penguin to return. And so if we aren't unable to revive Club Penguin, the next best thing we can do is appreciate a more spiritual successor or whatever that is,
Yeah, especially with something like Club Penguin 3D, they're taking it to the next level. But also, even with things like Rewritten, like Screenhog has posted the pictures in that world. So it's like obvious that they appreciate the fact that these kind of places, in a more professional sense, are carrying on the torch, which, I also played Club Penguin private servers back in the day, and it was lawless and very toxic. And it obviously has its own charm, and I'm glad I was able to sort of like experience something truly Wild West. But at the same time, having these kind of servers feels more in line with like the mythos of Club Penguin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it gives us a good way of still playing the game. I mean, everyone always wants to play the game even after it's closed, and the only way it's really possible is through private servers, and I think the developers they understand that, it's the only way that we can still play what we love,
Yeah, for sure. So this is kind of like more of a selfish question, but I just want to know, because you oftentimes like cover rare items and stuff on your Twitter. So let's just say a new server opened up, but you have full access to all the items over the game's history. What would be like your forever outfit? Like, what is the one that would be identified as, oh, that's Carphon? Because like you look at people like Mimo and even Fano and like some of these kind of faces in the community, and they always wore the same outfit. So I'm just curious what yours would be. And then in addition to that, over the whole course of the game, like what do you think are the top 10 or so most important items from over the course of the game?
It's funny you mentioned those two, like Fano and Mew, because they never change their outfit, right? Like if you see him in the room, like that's him. You don't even have to look at the name.
Those outfits.
Yeah, and for me, it's so hard to pick an outfit because I love wearing, all my items. But I'll go top to bottom. I love the second anniversary hat. I would do 3D glasses, yellow scarf, the blue duffel coat, which I think, in my opinion, is like the best body item.
Good. Class 05 too. Ooh.
Yeah, I know. And then the walking cane and no shoes. No shoes. No, that's it. And then I just think that captivates my persona. If I had to pick an outfit, that just like speaks to me for some reason. And in terms of the 10 most important items, I look at it from a historical standpoint, the most coveted items. And those would be the party hat. It was the first item. The red lei, the water wings, ice skate, pink toque, target background, clover pin, red and blue face paint, and the red cape.
Cape. Oh.
Yeah, like those embodied, like, I don't know if you ever went to the server Sleet and went to the dock, like those were you had to have those items if you wanted to be cool there. Like
sit around other people.
Yeah, like that. Those were the items, and I think growing up, some of those items I didn't have, and I was like, man, I want at least half of those. Like, please. Man.
I cannot tell you the deviant things that I would do for a party in Club Penguin.
Yeah, at that time, they were so coveted and like wanted, and people literally got popular for those items.
I know, there's a whole culture, rare culture. It's just so interesting.
It's ridiculous. But I loved it at the time. I literally loved it.
I'm trying to think of like an honorable mention. I think that the mining helmet is pretty iconic just because of the ice.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But which one? The yellow or the orange one? The mining helmet.
Orange wasn't the yellow first. Am I wrong? But
I think the yellow was first and the orange came out, but I do like the orange. I really do like the orange one.
Yeah, I mean, selfishly, that's just my underground 2006 roots. But
I mean, hey, yeah.
But I also love the ghost costume. A lot of rare outfits, kind of like, I felt so complete with like the ghost costume.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like the ghost costume is a really good, like, throw it on and it works. Anything works with it,
Seals the deal. But those are all really good items, and I'm glad you brought up Sleet Dock and all that, because just rare culture was just so, I guess rewritten has it to an extent, because items are here and they're there and maybe they don't repeat them, but the ones you named, like, those were never to return. They were the rare of the rare, and it meant something.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, there was a lot of buying accounts and trading accounts because of the items. I mean, look, beta testers would sell for over $4,000, and they would, and there would be systems where you can rent a beta tester for like $5 an hour, and especially recently, the past few months, I've connected with a ton of people who used to sell their accounts, and they were like, man, I made crazy money back in 2007. And what they would do is they'll change the password, let them log in, given the user doesn't ban them, and then they'll change the password back, and they just made $50 and let some random guy get famous on his penguin for a few hours.
Some clout at the dock.
Yeah, and like, so that culture profited people a lot of money and got people really famous, and so it's really interesting how that worked out in the end,
Yeah, it's like typical MMO, like even in something like World of Warcraft, like if you have
a
big item or like a legendary, people would be like, hey, he's pretty cool, I'm gonna stand next to him in Ironforge. But so I'm just kind of curious, and maybe this would have been a better like starter question, but like, why Club Penguin? How did you actually get into it initially, and like what keeps you wanting to contribute to the conversation in the game today, really?
So back when I started, I had moved to a new hometown, and I made a friend. We were really young, and he came over and he was like, dude, this game, it's penguins, check it out. It was like late 2006, and I thought it was awesome, and he played it through Miniclip, and many people can credit Miniclip for their discovery of Club Penguin. I mean, Miniclip alone gave Club Penguin millions of users within months. And I think if we had to label some of Club Penguin's big breaks, Miniclip would totally be a big one for them.
I found out about it. My friend showed me Miniclip too.
Yeah, and I think that was huge for Club Penguin. So yeah, I went on Miniclip for a little bit, and I saw it. And there was a huge jump in player count. I personally played up until about 2010. And I specifically remember one day, it had been a few weeks since I played, but one day I logged on and I was looking at my friends list. I'm like, none of y'all have logged on in like 2 years max. And so I'm like, I think this is it. I'm like, I gotta move on. And, but how I started was a year prior, around January 2009, I began documenting the game because Disney, as we know, Disney bought it in August 2007, but they were really starting to push their plans and changes around that time.
Yep.
And so I specifically remember, I think it was December 2008, Disney did a really big homepage update, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't dislike it, but I was like, I should totally take some pictures and document this. And at the time, I didn't know about the archive machine or the Wayback Machine, so I like recorded a bunch of assets, and I started doing that for years, and I held on to them until I joined Twitter in 2013, and I was like, well, I got all this stuff, and even if I didn't have photos in my mind, I remembered to a T, like when a pin was hidden, where it was stored, when parties started, and I was like, I gotta share this information. I think it's the coolest thing ever. And so once I started posting, a ton of people were able to relate to some of the times I had in the early days. Yeah, and like people like you. And generally because they joined perhaps later than I did, because I joined in 2006. Maybe some people who joined in 2009, they wanted to read up on what happened prior. And so they were using my page as like a historical thing to look at. And quite a few people nowadays, like on Club Penguin Rewritten, I did that item transfer, and I have that first anniversary party hat. But shockingly, my hat that I wear is older than some of the players who play nowadays.
Wow.
And so, like, yeah,
mind blowing.
And so I feel old. Like, there are some like 14-year-olds like, oh, you're Carphon, and like the hat I'm wearing is older than them. it's like I feel old now, but and so I just kept going from that. But sometimes it's okay if some people don't mind to know the history, because I spoke to Chris Hendricks, who is Screen Hog. I asked him a question about this because at the time I was really passionate about telling people the history. But he said a really cool quote. He said, people enjoy Mickey Mouse even if they don't know Steamboat Willie, and I'm okay with that. And so, like, sure, you can go on, whenever you joined it, you don't always have to look back on, but I'm always there in case people do, want to read about how the game was back in the day,
Right, and like your account is almost like a conduit for, say, that 14-year-old to discover Sleet Dock or, these other Microchip 123 and these kind of like famous moments of the past, because at the end of the day, like, rewritten wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't for the original. And it's good to just have context like that, and that's why I just appreciate your Twitter so much. It's like, I love the like on this day posts and just like this happened on this day and stuff like that, because it gives a reference point to something that people may not be aware of,
Yeah, exactly. It's a great comparison, and of course it can serve as inspiration for future private servers. I mean, the cycle could always continue. For things that worked in the past, maybe it can still work in the future. And many people would agree with that. They love seeing stuff return, and they love seeing their childhood relived, maybe in a more modernized way, all the while still respecting what worked in the past.
Yeah, those humble
paying homage.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and that's just like the beautiful thing that like even leads us to making videos like this. It's just getting to talk about those experiences and bring them to the light is just so important in the community, especially as the game gets older and older,
Oh yeah. Clock keeps on ticking,
Unfortunately. So,
yeah.
Since you've played for so long, and even now you've played for so long, what do you miss most about the game, and what hurts the nostalgic wound the most when you reminisce about it?
Though I appreciate private servers, I, like everyone else, miss logging onto the official thing. It's hard to explain, but it's not always the same. For one, the community was much stronger prior, and nowadays it's a bit more close-knit. It's still kind of large, but it has to be built upon and maintained for it to survive, because now we're in this private server era, so it's not nearly as strong.
Yeah.
And like I said, the numbers are still working together even in present day, luckily. But looking back, it does hurt that the plug was pulled in March 2017, and that I'm unable to maybe communicate with that one person that I was like best buds with back in the day, because I only had their screen name, and it was just a random name with a bunch of numbers. But I still have the memories, and I'm sure you can agree with those memories, maybe even photographs and videos. When you look back on, it still gives you a sense of pride that you went through that and had that in your childhood. And there are people still active today who can relate with those stories that you have. Like, just like me and you, we relate essentially to the same thing.
Yeah. I think, like, anytime I hear, like, a past party's music, especially, like, for me, it's like Halloween 2006, like that, like, wood instrument or whatever they're playing there.
No, that was a really cool soundtrack.
That just, like, I just, like, fall into a sea of fog and nostalgia. I'm just like, oh, man, like, people, if you heard it and you experienced it, you just know. Like, it's,
Yeah, I think for me, at the time when the Submarine party came out in 2008, it was so innovative. It was so different from previous parties. And I remember logging in and hearing that music spawning into the town, and I was like, this is the greatest party ever.
Do you have a favorite party, just like off the top of your head?
Yeah, so it would maybe be that one, or there's so many to pick from. Some people, I would maybe say Operation Blackout.
Yeah, that was highly regarded.
Yeah, that one was like the year I left, but I remember that was like a pinnacle party. That was great. And of course, there are tons of parties in the past which are great. I think personally, I'm trying to think. It would definitely be in Sheldon 7. Camp Penguin. That was a good one.
Cool one.
Yeah, you got your little marshmallow on a stick and just walk around the path.
So
man, that was great.
I'm trying to think what mine would be. Mine would probably be like an old one, but if I had to pick, like, I would probably do when the lighthouse opened up, because I remember you had to like donate coins and like look for like light bulb and stuff. And I remember when it first opened, it was just like a day that I don't think I'll ever forget, all the way back.
Yeah,
to 06 now.
Yeah, I think that was September of 06, and wow. Yeah, you got like a bunch of free items, and you could collect everything, donate. It was a way for the users to feel like they're contributing to something,
Yeah, the way we just look back at these parties, it's like, obviously it meant so much to us. As mentioned, like, many people say Club Penguin influenced their lives positively. So I'm just wondering, like, could you unpack why you think this game meant so much to so many people?
For many people, the game was an escape from daily life.
Yeah.
If they have something going on at home or some difficult going on, they could always get on and just chill with their best buds. And it offered different things to different people. And once again, I wanted to quote Chris Hendricks. He once told a story from 2006 where he received an email from a parent applauding the game developers because her son with autism was able to socialize and make friends. Something that he was having a lot of trouble in the real world doing. He said at that moment he had recognized really what they were doing. They were creating this great game, and with that story, that's just one story. So anyone with social problems or trouble at home, or maybe general depression, it was an escape for them. And I think that alone really cemented Club Penguin into everyone's minds.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. I bet they got so many great emails. And as we mentioned at the beginning of this thing, like, it also gave, even if you weren't like actively playing the game, you could participate and like post your art and like different ways of contributing to the community. And that still like goes on today. Like even if you go on like Rewritten's Discord and stuff, the art scene is like still popping, like it's still going.
Yeah, and it's like common acts of like, it's like gifts, you know. I'll see on Twitter someone will say, hey, I'm doing a little raffle, post your player card, I might draw you. It's a way to like give back to the community. They'll draw other players, or maybe they'll just do random give backs or just general recognition. And that really contributes to the, I guess, the overall being of feeling cared for and wanted in the community.
Yeah, that's a great point. Wow, I'm still like kind of like shook about that story. Like that's so beautiful. I'm just so happy that people got to connect in this giant virtual world with, like you said, possibly some of their best friends. Like you never know.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so this is probably going to be like my last question, but like I'm just wondering, over the course of the whole game, the whole timeline, what's something you wish happened in the game's lifespan? You know, whether lost in development, a missed opportunity, like anything like that.
Well, I think looking at it from a grand standpoint, an overall view, I think many people would agree when I say I wish Disney took a slower route with how they utilized things like cash grab opportunities for the game. They did a few events fairly well from my perspective. Perhaps like the Marvel takeovers, you know, in 2012, those were pretty cool. And I had quit at the time, but I saw the Star Wars takeovers. Those were really cool looking at. But I think the spirit of the players started to lower once the takeovers made it clear that it was starting to be more about money than the player experience. Yeah. And when we look back at the beginning of when we started talking, player experience was 110%.
That was
the focus of the development. That was like it. That was the focus. And perhaps that was lost later on. And I think if we were to go back, I think that was one thing that we should have done better. Perhaps Club Penguin may or may not, you know, still be here. You never know.
Yeah, that's so true. I remember that Disney acquisition being like a huge deal. Like,
oh yeah, and they did a great job with it, because some could argue, absolutely, like perhaps, I don't know if you know this, but Sony was in the race to buy Club Penguin.
Wow,
and
kidding.
Yeah, and Sony put up a price, and Disney put up a bigger price. And some will argue, and I actually agree, Club Penguin wouldn't have gotten nearly as big alone without Disney.
Yeah,
and it was the best decision. I mean, I would have went for it. You know, that was the best way for millions more people to play the game. And so after 10 years, just like any private server, it almost had the same lifespan with Disney as Toontown did, 10 years. And it's like a 10-year mark almost for most of the private servers. And I think it's great that Disney got it, but I think perhaps maybe there are ways differently that we could have handled it, you know?
It really kind of did change sort of the philosophy of the game a bit. But like you said, I think like the core reason, the spirit of the players, like that was imperative to Club Penguin. And I not that Disney did a poor job with that. And like you said, it brought it to the mainstream. But that's sort of where it lost it a little bit, was like that fulfillment for players to feel like they could still talk to someone like Screenhog, and it like made a difference.
Yeah, and like I said, I had quit at the time, but Club Penguin had sprouted into this new version called Club Penguin Island, and I hardly played it, but even that has private servers like Club Penguin Island forever. I mean, people like that version too, and they still want to continue that. And so Disney still did some great things even up until nearly when the game closed.
Yeah.
But overall, I think Disney was still the greatest thing that happened. But there are some things that probably could have happened different. And even like me, I'm still thankful everything happened the way it did, you know, because I met so many people, and I think how long it lasted, it was just at the perfect time. And whenever I needed someone to talk to, it was always there.
Yeah, it was a full and rich story, and you got to ride the roller coaster pretty much through the whole thing, you know? you get to zoom out and sort of look at all these moments. And I just think that having that still be a thing shows that while yes, things may have happened, the spirit is definitely still there. And I don't think it'll ever die. I think Club Penguin is going to always have some form of spark.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that general idea, I mean, you still see inspirations to this day, like in games like Lance Preeb's new project, Box Critters, that he's been working on for quite a few years.
Yeah.
You still see some components of Club Penguin in there. And that's not a bad thing. It's what worked. And I mean, hey, he's the original creator, so
he's the actual OG.
so he can still use those ideas, but you see tons of not copycats. I wouldn't call them copycats. Some people would, but I think it's just inspiration. And modern virtual worlds now, though they are scarce, they based a lot of their components on Club Penguin.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think these were great questions. I'm really happy I got to sit down and talk to you. I guess like my last thing would just be like, is there anything you want to say to your community? Like, is there, not to me, but to the people that read your Twitter and sort of like see these posts that you make and maybe have played in 06 or are just starting on Rewritten?
Yeah, especially the past few years, I love the support I've gained, especially from people like Questy, who like really helped me get a platform, so to say. But it's so awesome seeing so many people join the community, even now. Perhaps they didn't even play the original game, but it's that mutual respect that I think is still keeping the community strong. And I think if we keep that momentum, perhaps we'll even see a revival of some sorts and everything as we wanted, would work out. And I think that's important to hold on to. Yeah, man.
Cool. Well, thank you, Carphon. I appreciate it. Your information and your perspective was just, it's unmatched. It's so unique and it's so wonderful, but it's so relatable at the same time. So just thanks for having this little conversation, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you for reaching out to me. This was awesome, like collaborating with you.
Cool. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a good one.